Well, thank you all for joining us tonight as we converse with the leaders of two different grassroots organizations in New York State. My name is Bridget Heap, and I am a research associate at Feed My Sheep Foundation. I have a master's in philosophical apologetics, and I co-authored The Sexual Holocaust, A Global Crisis with Dr. John Sanford.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie McMillan. I'm also a research associate with Feed My Sheep Foundation. I have a master's of science in education in school counseling, and I worked in a public school in the Rochester area for several years. Feed My Sheep Foundation is a nonprofit organization focused on promoting a biblical worldview. Bridget and I are also part of the Center for Childhood Innocence, which is a New York State effort to protect kids from harmful instruction. And we're also part of Protect Child Health Coalition, which is a national group that is working towards the same effort.
So we recognize that one of the most effective ways for change to occur is through local efforts, through the moms, dads, grandparents, youth leaders, and community members to be willing to speak out and address concerns with their local districts. So we hope tonight will be an encouragement to you as we get the opportunity to speak with a couple of wonderful women who are a part of grassroots organizations. They will be sharing about how they have spoken to their school boards and administrators, impacted school board elections, reached out to legislators, and brought awareness to critical issues in their district.
So I have the pleasure of introducing Brenda. Brenda Hansen is the assistant administrator at Central Baptist Christian School in Yorkshire, New York. She has taught high school math and science at Central Baptist since 2009. Brenda is also part of the leadership team of a group of peaceful patriots called We the People, who meet once a month to discuss current relevant political, social, and cultural issues. They also discuss ways that their group as Christians can engage the culture in a meaningful way that glorifies God and shines the light of truth in dark places. Brenda is a wife, a mother, a grandmother, but above all, she is redeemed and loves to proclaim it.
That's awesome. So I have the honor to introduce Melanie Smith. So Melanie is blessed to be a wife of 22 years to her husband, Greg, and is a stay-at-home mom to two daughters, ages 13 and 10. Now, she helps with Greg's IT business, hosts a home church, and leads a grassroots group in Canandaigua, New York, called Help Not Harm. Her organization cares deeply about the hearts, minds, and futures of the children in Canandaigua School District, and they work to promote truthful, rigorous, and balanced education with school transparency and parent involvement.
Awesome. So as we have a conversation with Brenda and Melanie, please feel free to text in any questions or comments that you have, and we will work to incorporate those into our conversation as well. So you don't have to wait till the end. Feel free to text in at any point. You can find the texting phone number on the screen, and it's 833-942-6158.
Okay, so let's get started. Brenda and Melanie, we appreciate you both joining us for this webinar. And our goal for tonight is to encourage others as they consider getting involved or are already working to combat indoctrination in their schools. So tonight we'll be asking both of you questions so that you can share the work that you're doing in your regions with others across New York and the country. So to start off, Brenda, can you tell us about your group and your role with the group?
Sure. So thank you so much for hosting this webinar and for inviting me to participate in it. I really appreciate this opportunity and being able to share what my group does and who we are and how we came to be. So we meet once a month, and there's about 300. Now, we don't all meet at one time, but we have an email list of about 300 people that we can organize to tackle this problem or that problem in our local school districts. And we meet once a month and at Central Baptist Christian Church, and we're called We the People. And we started meeting in March of 2021. Initially, it was a little, we weren't completely sure where we were heading with meeting. We could just sense that things in the culture were going in a very bad direction. Certainly the COVID mandates were probably at that point in time the biggest thing that everybody was very concerned with and trying to maneuver through those waters. So that was kind of what started us. But as we started to meet, we identified, we paid more attention to other issues that were going on, including um, the diversity, equity, inclusion language that's used now in New York State schools and across the country, which of course has a deeper meaning than that and is often code for critical theory, as well as keeping our eyes on the comprehensive sex ed standards that are looming upon our school districts. So my group, I'm a co-leader. There's three of us, and we each kind of have different roles. We have our Greg Rieger, who is kind of the worldview guy, and he always gives the big picture message. And his wife, Mary, who focuses on medical and homeschooling. And then there's me, who focuses on the political issues and how to engage, like how to go to your school board, how to communicate to legislators, how to watch legislation and things like that. So we are a mixed bag, our group. We have Christians and non-Christians. We have professional and we have working class. I would say we do tend to have more older versus younger people, and that I would say is an ongoing problem that we need to be trying to find answers to. We need to get the younger generation, the 20 somethings, the 30 somethings, really need to bring them into the fold and make sure that they're brought to the forefront of this. This is their world that they're going into. So that's just a little snapshot of who we are down here in Yorkshire, New York.
Awesome. All right, Melanie, do you mind sharing with us about your group?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you also for having me on. And our group is so appreciative to Feed My Sheep and the ministry and the work that you do. So thank you for including us in this conversation. So I lead a grassroots group in Canandaigua, New York. And again, we're called Help Not Harm. And we're made up of parents, grandparents, community members, basically voters within the Canandaigua City School District. So right now we're pretty laser focused on just our district. But like, I'm here tonight. We would love to help whoever we can, give advice or whatever, but we are really focused in on our district as local as possible. But we became aware of the school district's push to glorify sexual ideologies and gender theories and transgenderism in 2021. And the school's promotions of these sexual and gender ideologies, we found actually pressure students and staff to not only accept, but celebrate these controversial ideologies. So we were deeply concerned that the school teaching every sexual orientation, which orientations I had never even heard of, I had to look up, including pansexual, polysexual, down the list. But we're really concerned that that's sexualizing young kids and when they otherwise would not have been interested in them. So very concerned about robbing their innocence. And we are also really concerned about the school promoting the gender identity topics, again, including transgenderism, and planting those seeds of confusion in otherwise healthy minds that, again, weren't already thinking of those things. So to top off our concerns and our alarms, we were finding that the school did not want parents in the community or the community to know that they were promoting these things. And so we just felt we needed to coalesce and form a group so that we had greater numbers to support each other, but also to provide a more unified front to the school.
Oh, awesome. Appreciate that so much. So I'd love to hear, we've heard overall what issues you guys are focused on, and that you gather and you try to bring awareness to these things. What other things have you guys done to start to combat these issues? I know both of you have done amazing work. So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Melanie, what have you guys been working on? I know it's a new effort, but you guys have accomplished a lot in a short amount of time.
Yep. So we began actually with creating a petition that we went door to door to people we knew and got hand signatures that we ended up presenting to the superintendent and also to the school board. And then I felt it really important to actually create a website. So that took a while, but to be able to get our voice out about these topics, because we were already facing some backlash, um, name calling and such, and putting words in our mouth. And so we were able to create a website called helpnotharm.net. And so that our community can learn, our side of how we're feeling and our concerns in our own words. And like Brenda's group, we meet monthly. And it really is such an encouragement. I mean, we're talking about heavy subjects, but it's very motivating. It's encouraging. It sometimes acts like a support group. But we can move forward with plans and goals. And so yeah. And then our latest attempt is we were able to rent a digital billboard spot on that goes through sort of the main drag through town. And we're still wondering about the effectiveness of that. I think it has gotten some word out, but we'll see what feedback we get from that.
Okay, so not a ton of feedback yet.
No, it sounds like one of our group members actually very nicely posted something about the billboard on nextdoor.com. And so I think we got even more feedback from that, but I'm not sure yet. So we need to reach out and find out.
That's great.
Brenda, were there any of the specific concerns that you wanted to elaborate on for us tonight?
Sure. So our school district, we've had an interesting journey with them, with the Board of Education. Again, as I said before, we kind of started out with the COVID mandates. That was what really got people to start showing up. And they were much more willing to speak when it came to that. I am finding that it's very difficult to get parents in particular to speak out at the school board meetings. There is this strange fear, especially if it's a parent that is also an employee of the district, of speaking. So there is this major problem with self-censoring going on. And I would say that that's one of the biggest things we're battling right now, is trying to get people to be brave enough to just say what shouldn't be controversial, although I guess it is now, to just say what's true, to say what's pure, to say what's right. And so we're really working hard to try to empower people by helping them feel confident because they know what they're talking about. So we really want to inform people and give them the tools so that if they have that confidence, they'll be able to stand up, they'll be able to speak, they'll find the courage, and to be constantly reminding them that when they speak, they actually are saying what people in the community are thinking, but might not be ready to say or know how to say. There needs to be an equipping. And so that's really where we're at right now. We've talked often, we've given public comment frequently to the Board of Education. They've been a little more accessible lately. We actually are having a superintendent search going on right now. Our superintendent in the Pioneer District was let go last year. Ultimately, he resigned for reasons that have not yet been made aware of. We FOIA'd for those, but it doesn't look like it's going to be forthcoming. But ultimately, I went last week and read a petition regarding what we would like to see with the new superintendent. And I did dig into the details of the LGBTQIA plus agenda and I tried to hit some very specific things like Title IX. Can't we all agree that Title IX is there to protect women, and we have to, I kept coming back to that, this desire to protect women, to make sure that female-only spaces are preserved. And even though there's pressure from Albany on you guys, and I know that's true, Can we agree on this? And trying to, I wanted to connect with them too, because I know that there is pressure from Albany. So if we can find ways that we can work together rather than be at each other's throats, that's probably a good idea. So sometimes that's possible and sometimes that's not. The last thing I'll say is that um, when we realized that there was some pushback from the board, which has gotten better, but there was some pushback trying to prevent us from speaking. They put us from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. They moved the public comment to the end of the meeting instead of the beginning. They kind of lectured us about, if you're talking about things that you need to be talking to the state legislature about, why are you talking to us? And we would say to them, don't you think we've talked to the state legislature? Don't you think we've sent emails? Don't you think we've begged? And they didn't really understand that. They seemed to think that somehow we could influence the state legislature, which seems to be about impossible, unless we elect other people. So what I started to do, I became a freelance uh, uh, reporter for our local paper. And I write every week whenever I'm at a school board meeting. And so I'm really making sure to be informing the community the best that I can what's going on at our school board. So that's been helpful too.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So there's a few things in there. One, it sounds like preparing your group members with information. So equipping them with truth, with facts, so that they feel confident that when they speak to anybody or to their school boards, they feel like they have the information to share. And helping them not feel alone in that too, by doing that in the public group meetings. And then you said also connecting with your administrators on shared values, things that you both agree on, so that you guys can make headway and not just constantly go head to head and combat. And then lastly, communicating with the public through the local newspaper. That's great. And I know you do it through social media as well. Yeah, which is great. Yeah, those are really effective means. And Melanie, with your billboard and your website and also through your meetings, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of similar things.
Yeah, and I think I would just jump in there and say, I think that Brenda, you hit on it when you're saying that you need to empower people and encourage them that we can discover what the truth is and we can talk about these issues, because I think honestly some of these issues really are taking a lot of people by surprise. I think that's the thing that I hear the most when I do presentations. They say it's really not that bad, and then I say it is, and I show them, they sit through the presentation and then they say, whoa, I didn't realize that was really going on. So yeah, part of getting information to your community members and helping them to see that they can share that with others, that's definitely super helpful.
And if I could just say real quick, it's so important that we make sure the information we get to them is accurate too. So I'm always very careful, because a lot of times there'll be memes or stories or things that kind of tickle people's fancy that comes through. And I always vet those things before I pass them on, because the last thing we want is to have people stand before a school board or the public and say something foolish that's not actually true or that can't be proven. I mean, we really need to do our due diligence. And I want to say that Bridget came to our group earlier this year in the spring and did a wonderful presentation that was very clear and very thorough. And we videoed that and we shared that with both our group and other groups in Cattaraugus County. And I think that, Bridget, just so you know, in many ways, you were responsible for waking up as we shared that video, a lot of people, and we ended up having school board members elected and replaced in Olean, Franklinville, and the Pioneer School District. And it was in no small part because of the information that you shared, and the way you shared it. I mean, very professional and very thorough. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's encouraging to hear. I'm glad that was helpful for your area.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think all of us hopefully have in common, is that we all have the desire to speak the truth in love. And so I think that is very the most effective way to do anything, right? So what has that looked like for you, Melanie, as you've been communicating with a lot of folks? You've communicated with people at the school board, local doctors, local counselors, or your legislators. You've communicated with a lot of people. So what does that look like? Like, what tips do you have for communicating, especially with the school districts?
Yeah, I have had a little bit of experience with that in the last couple of years, but I feel like I'm still learning too. So This is not something that comes naturally to me. Have always been more of the personality of not making waves. So this is very opposite to my personality. And, you know, I give that glory to God because he's the one that tapped me on the shoulder and said, you need to go do this. And took a few months. But anyway, yes. So, you know, meeting in person, I think, is a big deal for anybody at the school, especially because it really shows you're very serious. You can look them straight in the eye. You know, text or email is very difficult to sense somebody's heart. You know, you can take things not maybe in the correct way. But yeah, sitting down with them and really just asking questions. You know, one of the meetings in particular, especially with the superintendent, was pretty difficult. We tried to find common ground like Brenda had suggested, and there was no budge to find common ground on these sexual and gender topics. And so, and he also suggested, you know, go to your legislators. And it's like, well, no, really, it's our school district that's making these decisions. So, but yes, talking with them, having, you know, we had points written down ahead of time because, you know, as you're talking, it's, for me, easy to forget what line of, you know, thinking I was going on. But yeah, and, you know, in meeting with teachers, it's, you know, it's just maybe sensing where people are coming from, right? So with teachers, I'm getting the sense of more like they just want to appear loving to these kids, right? They've been told that if they don't affirm whatever, you know, sexual or gender confusion they have going on, if they don't affirm it, then these kids are going to commit suicide, you know? And so they've been, in my mind, they've been emotionally blackmailed. And so going into these teachers and trying to explain, okay, no, this is actually the facts, you know, these are the studies that have been done. And, you know, this is where, if you continue teaching these things, where we're going to be in the next couple of years, you're going to be teaching about things you probably don't speak about even in your home, you know? So just getting a sense of where people are coming from. And there have been people who I feel are really activists in the school. I mean, they have a very large goal in really proselytizing this belief system. And so I guess just trying to prepare ahead of time to the possibilities. But again, I need God on my side and just asking for wisdom in those times, because again, I'm very far from a professional or experienced at doing this, but it's just been a step-by-step process.
Which is why it's so encouraging. I mean, we're just moms and dads and teachers, and, you know, we just want to help the kids. And that's what's needed, is just the everyday person to stand up and share the values, because we're silenced, and like Brenda said, by ourselves oftentimes, of just not wanting to speak out, and certainly by our culture as well. But so it sounds like going in person's been really helpful for you, preparing ahead of time, praying ahead of time. And then I know you've been really good about documenting your conversations and the effects of that, which is, I think, helpful for other people. And you put some of that on your website.
Yes.
Which I think is a great idea for other groups. You know, that way it's not the same thing being done over and over. You know, this conversation's been had, here were the results of that conversation. Let's keep moving forward and get more information and press forward. So.
Right. Also, I would add a couple things that I still think, though, if it's even more effective when, let's say, parents keep meeting with the superintendent, right? Parents keep meeting with the teachers, keep showing, because it's not just Melanie. Oh, here's Melanie Smith again. you know, keep doing it. We need, like Brenda said, we need these parents. We need parents to be courageous and going there. And the other point I was going to make is pictures have been huge. When we've been able to get pictures of the displays in the hallways, of homework assignments, of all of these things, that's really made a big impact on people who weren't really aware of what's going on.
Great. So I'm going to interject here for just a second because we have some questions already coming in, and I want to make sure that we are answering our viewers' questions. So first of all, Brenda and Melanie, can you both just really quick remind everybody what districts you guys are in New York State? Brenda, you can go ahead and start.
Sure. I'm in the Pioneer Central District down in Cattaraugus County.
And I'm in the Canandaigua City School District, which is in the Finger Lakes.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So then the next question that came in, they said, thank you for sharing your experiences. We also have a local group who is struggling with the same issues. Have you consulted lawyers yet to assist you guys?
That's a matter of prayer still. So we have consulted attorneys. One was able to meet with us, but I don't think wanted to continue. And we're having a hard time actually finding local. We wanted to find a local attorney who would be able to give us advice and maybe represent us if necessary, but that's been a challenge for us.
We have not consulted attorneys. Although I think it's important for everybody to know, especially parents, that there are certain national organizations that if you have a case, they'll take it and they will fight for you. Now, you've got to have a case. You've got to be able to demonstrate standing. But we've got Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, and there's others. I'm trying to remember. I should have been a little more prepared, but Kelly Shackelford's organization, which is not coming to my head right now, but these are two. And also Stephen Miller's recently developed organization, American First Legal. These are all organizations that if you contact them and you've got a solid case, they're looking for they're looking for people to pursue litigation. So as far as our group having legal counsel, not at this point. But I think it's important for parents and groups out there to know that this exists, but especially parents. It's going to be parents that are going to have standing. It's not going to be me or my group. It's going to have to come through parents.
Yeah.
And that's hard because kids, I think that sometimes parents look at their children and they say, well, what am I going to be putting my child through if I do this? And yeah, that's going to be hard, but what are you going to be putting your child through if you don't? I think we have to ask that question as well.
Yeah,
That's
a good question.
And I think, folks that we've spoken with, we've also referred to the Child and Parental Rights Campaign. But again, that's not local, but I know that they have been helpful for a couple of people that I've sent their way. And I know there's another group out in California that has a lawyer. Protect Our Kids, one of their founding members is an attorney, but I think that he wouldn't necessarily be able to give specific legal advice on these issues. I think though he does refer to other folks who he is in touch with, so that can be helpful. But that's the number one question that I keep getting, and Bridget and I have gotten and wanted ourselves as some local to New York. So hey, lawyers out there, if you're interested, you have a lot of groups who would like some counsel.
That's right.
And
my group members, there's people that they want to give financially. Maybe they don't have time to support in other ways or abilities in certain things, but they want to give financially. So, we're not asking attorneys to do this for free either. We would just love an attorney to give us advice. Is like, okay, well, the board president said that this was law. Is this actually a law? Someone to be able to consult. So yes, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so we do have a bunch of followers right now watching this. So even if any of you out there are watching this, we would love it if you can text in some suggestions of just local New York lawyers, if you know any, because that is a great question right now. It's just, yeah, where do we go to make sure that we're understanding the legal issues with this? What rights do we have? So that's definitely very important. So I do appreciate this. There is another question here, I think, that came off of Melanie's conversation about just, talking with some of the teachers. How do you keep calm and not get upset while talking about these things with the administration and the teachers? And I think that this is a valid question because I know that we are very passionate, especially when it's our kids that are being involved and hearing these issues. How do you have those conversations and keep calm and be loving through it?
Was that for me?
Either one of you, go ahead,
Okay.
whoever wants to jump on that one.
Personally, I get very upset at times, and my loving and poor husband is a great sounding board. So usually I get my anger out with him, and he, we can talk through things. But that's where meeting face to face really helps, because yes, you can be angry and upset, but there's something about being in person, for me anyway, that kind of checks me a little bit. Whereas and I've done it, firing off emails, it's a lot easier to have an angry tone when you're not facing someone. So it does help to be face to face. It is still a challenge, especially when you sense that they really don't care to listen to your view.
Can I respond to that too?
Yes, please.
I think it is hard. And I think that meeting face to face is very, very important. Although I think there's also some risk, depending on your personality, to meeting face to face. That sometimes, if you are kind of a non-confrontational person and you meet face to face and you have a solid argument for where you stand, and then you meet that person and you find out just how nice maybe they are, it can be a little more intimidating to actually challenge them and to continue to follow through with what you need to do. So I'm always kind of balancing that, right? But I do think we have to find ways to meet face to face and to cultivate the dialogue. And as we do that, of course, if we're the person that kind of tends to go in like a bull in a china shop, we have to make sure that we're remembering the humanity of the other person that we're talking to, as well as we have to know our stuff. So I find that the more confident I am with what I know and why I know it, and the better I can then communicate my ideas, the less defensive I get when that person expresses a different point of view. And I'm able to keep my calm. And I know if I can't keep my calm, I'm going to kind of delegitimize the point I'm actually trying to make. So you really have to be ready. You don't want to wing it when you go in there. You do want to be ready and to know, kind of anticipate what you might be talking about. And
Yeah.
you know what? I think also we tend to be on the defense all the time. And I think that we really have to understand, we have to kind of reframe our own thoughts here, because our message is a good message. And so we have to find ways to get that message out there on offense. Like we can say to people, listen to what I know, what we can do, what's right, what's real. And I think if we can have that optimistic, clear messaging that's more on the offense and not always be controlled by being on the defense, I think that we'll reach more people too. And if I could just say, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but what Melanie said too about the teachers or the occasional staff that proselytizes in the schools, I'll tell you what, it only takes one or two in a school to wreck it for everybody. So I would say to people, if you've got that one or two person in the school, you need to remember that there's a lot of teachers there that don't agree with what's going on, but that proselytizer is generally very loud and very much a person willing to make you miserable if you cross him or her. And so you need to keep telling yourself the truth. this person is not representing the entirety of this district and this community.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to echo, and I'm glad you brought it back to that. I would say that most, based on my own experience though, most people in the school districts aren't necessarily activists for these causes that we are concerned about. I'd say most are like neutral, right? Or even maybe a little concerned, but don't want to speak out or don't have the conviction or the knowledge or the information. And so going to them with the heart of questions, wanting to connect, and then sharing information is a lot more effective than immediately being combative, because you can get a lot more and you can work together. I mean, most people don't join education for the money. I mean, honestly, it was pretty low paid position for a long time there. And it was because we love kids, you know? And so if you go in with that, it's like, this person believes that they are loving my child. And I have information that says they're not loving my child with this. And so I want to share that in an effective way and have this result in change. And we know that just loud, angry conversations don't tend to result in effective change. But it sounds like you guys have done an excellent job of that. Okay. So next question that came in was, thank you both for the work that you are doing. With the parallel introduction of critical race theory curriculums alongside the LGBTQ, especially the trans ideology in the classrooms, have you found that parents are more willing to stand up against one or the other? I know, Melanie, your group really is focused on the gender and sexualization issues. So I think this would be more to Brenda. What have your parents been, focused on?
I think that parents, when they're in their echo chamber, are definitely upset about critical theory. I think it's important to realize that critical theory isn't just critical race theory, though. You've got critical queer theory, you've got critical gender theory. And so I don't really know that there's a separation here. I think that there is an interweaving of these alternate worldviews that actually at their heart are worldviews that deny reality, in addition to denying, of course, biblical truths, but also reality itself. I mean, especially the transgender movement, the politicized transgender movement. So I think that there is an equal concern, but I keep coming back to, I am equally concerned that parents are just so afraid of talking when they're outside of their echo chamber. I can get them together. We can have these great conversations, but when they have to stand all by themselves, or they think they're all by themselves, they generally have not done it. Now, part of that might just be that they're not equipped yet. We have to help them be equipped. I think that the electronic world we live in, coming back to this idea that reality is kind of weird, there is this idea that from social media and our electronic world, that the world is a certain way, and that if you speak on these things, the mob will come from you, for you. And I think we need to tell the truth. That is the mob will, if the mob comes for you, the mob will go away. And so we just need to speak the truth. And the truth is that social media, the electronic world, the virtual world is just that. It's not real. You need to figure out what's real, and then you need to stand for that. And what's real is that our kids from New York State down are going to be pressured to embrace an ideology that is in direct opposition to our biblical worldview, or even our conservative worldviews if you're not a Christian. And we need to acknowledge that. And I think that parents, it's really on them. And I don't know how else to say it other than parents have to start speaking or exiting. That's another way that they can use their voice.
Yeah, can you speak to that at all, Melanie? What would you say to the parents who are afraid to speak out and are having some of that fear? Because that's something I've heard from a lot of groups.
Yes. they're not alone. I think Brenda talked about that too. For anyone who thinks, well, that's what? What are they saying and to my child? What is that in the hallway? And you're not alone in scratching your head. So, where I try to find others who feel the same is you can, in the course of conversation, without even talking about these critical theories, you can get a sense for people's satisfaction with the school or just with what's going on in culture. And then just take a little step out in just your one-to-one conversations with people and say, hey, what do you think about fill in the blank, at school? Or have you heard this or that? And then, that's how a lot of my conversations and, growing the group has happened too. So it's not necessarily like you're going to all of a sudden be on this big stage and, be attacked. It really is an inner working, word of mouth, coming together. And then, like Brenda said, it's educating yourself. The more you know about these topics, the more you know about the real statistics and data coming out, the more you do feel confident. But I would also caveat that with saying, I knew way less a year ago when I started this. So don't wait till you feel like you're an expert, because I think parents need to speak up now, even if you don't know all the reasons why. You just say, it's wrong that a teacher is encouraging my daughter that she could be a boy. Like, on gut level, I know that this is wrong, right? And so don't be afraid to speak out about that. So, but yes, education is huge. And also realize that the few activists possibly in your school, they want you to be silenced because they actually can't answer the questions that you have for them. Like, they don't have common sense positions for some of these critical theories. And so instead they want to intimidate you, but there's really not a whole lot behind the name calling.
That's a great point that you bring up, both with your conversation with people in your community, but then also with teachers and superintendents. Part of it is just even asking them, right? I mean, nobody's going to be offended if you ask them and say, hey, what is your position on this? Have you heard about these issues? Have you read this? Maybe have some kind of resource ready that you can share, with people in your community or teachers. And part of that is that you are concerned about them, that you see them as, an authority figure or a role model to your students, and you want to see where they stand with these issues, and you want to get to know them on that basis. And so, yeah, I think, Melanie, those are great ideas. This idea of just, we can all do that right now, no matter how much information we know about these issues. We can go out and the next person that we see, be like, hey, have you heard about this? Like, what's your position on this? And then, yeah, the more that we educate ourselves on these issues, then we can pass that along. So that is definitely some great advice on those things to do.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple of other questions coming in. Someone here had a few questions, but one, do you have any experience, and I know Melanie does, with surveys and the surveys that are being asked of students, and what experience do you have, and can they opt out of these surveys?
Yes, you can opt out of surveys. That is probably the most recent issue that we're dealing with our school. And they did provide us with the survey language. However, they weren't prepared to. I think they were surprised that we asked. And I think, again, after educating myself over, the euphemisms that are used, you can start to pick up on that's not really an appropriate question, and that's going to feed into the school trying to bring in these social emotional learning ideas that, again, feed the activism. I'm just starting to learn about that, so I don't know if Brenda has more experience with it, but yes, you can opt out. Excuse me.
If you know about it,
True.
sometimes. So
True.
I think you really need to prepare your children too. I mean, our kids need to be ready to say, you know what, I'm not I'm not going to fill this out. I'm not comfortable
Mhm.
doing
Mm.
this. So we need to work on having our kids stand against that flood, perhaps of data mining and evaluations that are done behind the backs of parents. Sometimes I think you just need to contact the school and alert them that you do not want your child to complete any survey unless you've been given the opportunity to preview it and to
Mhm.
see what it's about. And I think that this really, at its heart, as much as we were talking about comprehensive sex ed and uh, SEL and critical theory and stuff, I think we also need to keep always bringing it back to parental rights,
Mhm.
parental rights, and trying to frame it that way as well. That these are our kids. It's not the
Mhm.
state's kids,
Yeah.
and we need to remind them these are our children. Or
Yes.
at least
Yeah.
this is my child, and we are not going to participate in this. Or we're not.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think empowering our children too, that while they are at the school and they are in certain situations, that they have a right to say, no, I don't feel comfortable being involved in this. And also to open up that door of communication between the child and the parent. That,
Mhm.
parents sometimes have a tendency to check out because they think they're like, oh, the school covered this, or my kids are learning this, or my kids are okay with this. But opening up those lines of communication where you're speaking first and foremost to your own children and asking them, what are they learning at school? What did they do today? Have they taken any surveys? What are they learning in their classrooms? And the more that your kids realize that you care about them and you care about their education, and you want to be a part of their life, the more then that they'll talk to you about these issues and you can get a sense of what's going on too.
We've
Yeah.
really become a culture that defers to experts. And I think it's important for
Mhm.
parents to realize that they are the primary expert. They are the primary educator of their child, their children. And so I think that that's a big thing too. Don't defer.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's this idea that whoever teaches your child the thing first, right? That's what's going to be stuck in
Mhm.
that child's mind. So are we preparing our children with the truth so that they can go out there? Because even if they're not in the public schools, they're likely going to be confronted with these issues in the culture at some point. So,
Mhm.
just to encourage parents to lay a foundation of truth early and frequently,
Yeah.
and be able to speak about controversial issues in the home so that they understand your perspective and they can start to think critically about these things before they're just taught exactly how to think by the culture.
Right. Exactly.
So we do want to wrap it up in a little bit here. So let's try to get to a few more of the questions from the people who are watching. So we do actually have a comment / suggestion that praying for, the board members, the president, the superintendent, just praying for these people that
Mhm.
are involved with our kids and involved, even the legislators, so just that's a great, I think just a great suggestion is to just keep all of them in prayer because, they are human beings just like us. God loves them. They do think that they're doing the best that they can for kids. And so part of this is a battle for truth. And so if we can
Mhm.
pray for them that God will open up their eyes and help them to see truth, then that could go a long way.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Something special our group has been able to do this last year is meet together for prayer, excuse me, and actually pray over the school buildings. So meeting in the parking lot, certain evenings, and just it's a different, powerful experience to be there in person and to really picture, if you believe in these things, a spiritual battle going on, and praying for the protection of the kids, but also, yes, absolutely praying for our school leaders. Yeah,
Mhm.
great point.
So the next question that we have here is, what if I find out the school has encouraged and or counseled my child in the LGBTQIA culture without my consent or knowledge? Have you guys seen that happening at all? Or, do you have anything to suggest?
I think it's going to happen.
Mhm.
And I think that the state is probably going to fall on the side of the school district for doing this. I think the state is actually going to expect the school district to do this without parental permission or the opportunity to opt out. And I think parents need to be aware of that. This is a big battle, and the school districts are going to look at this point to the state for guidance rather than parents, unfortunately. And the only way you should alert your school that you do not want your child participating. You should draft a letter that is clear that is not that you will show up if you find out that they're asked to go to an assembly or participate in counseling or any of that. But I think you should not be naive and think that the school district is going to ultimately come to you. You need to be on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that's come out too in our discussions with our school board. Our school board president told us that if our child came to a staff member and declared themselves to be the other gender, that they don't have to tell us, and they don't have any responsibility to tell us, even if meeting with the counselor. So that is very concerning, and I think that should concern a lot of parents.
They
So,
actually have this idea that, and I don't know that it's why they think this, but the districts seem to think that not only do they not have to tell the parents, but that they are prohibited from telling the
Yes.
parents unless the child gives them permission. And I don't know that that's actually in any of the regs anywhere, but that is certainly what these districts seem to think they're supposed to.
Yeah, there's this there's a couple of laws out there that are being interpreted that way. And so one of them is the gender law, which was the one that opened up bathrooms to be accessible, well, any public accommodations to anybody based on gender identity. So essentially it made all restrooms and public facilities in New York State co-ed. And so that included in that was some language. It essentially changed human rights law to say that there should be no discrimination based on gender identity. Well, some of the interpretation of that law is saying, well, it's discrimination to out somebody to somebody before they're ready. And so schools and BOCES have now taken that interpretation and say, well, that applies to schools. And so then if a child comes out to you as a teacher or staff member, it's discrimination to communicate that with the parent. But that's not true. That's all an interpretation that has not been tested in court to our understanding. And we have been looking into this pretty extensively and trying to find that with regards to New York State. It has been tested elsewhere though, and teachers can tell the parents. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw recently, I think it was just last week in the news that the one teacher got paid, I think $95,000 because she had been fired for telling a parent about her child's transgender identity, and she ended up winning. And so, you know, there really is this precedent that parents have a right to know, and they do have a right to know. So even though schools believe they cannot tell you as the parent, they have to tell you if you request the information. Their school records are your right as their parent. And so if you're requesting the information from a parent, because of FERPA, you have the right to that information. And so, and that's, I guess, how some schools are interpreting it, that they won't tell you unless the parent asks for that information. So be asking for your child's records and information about your child all the time, especially if you have concerns about their well-being.
Yeah. All right. So we have just a few minutes here left. So this question says, how does a parent find a group like this in their area? So maybe if you see Melanie's billboard, you'll know, oh, she's in my area. But what else? I mean, part of, I think, what we're trying to do tonight is to encourage people to start groups in their area, because not every area might have one. But what else do you guys think? I mean, any other suggestions here?
I think you have to understand it doesn't have to be a big group. It's okay to start with a handful of dedicated parents, staff people. Boy, if you could get a couple teachers, that would be amazing. To start with a handful of people that are committed and willing to do the work that needs to be done. If you can't find a group, the best I can say to you is start talking to other parents in your circle and become that little group that meets in your house for coffee, that starts to talk about what you're observing. You start to invite other people, that you expand the circle outward, and you just start sitting down and talking. Don't make it complicated. It's okay to find the people in your little group and to just move forward that way. And then as your group gets a little more meat on the bones, identify the one or two people that can really be the leaders. And what you want is you want to have somebody who can lead it, who will make it as easy as possible for people to participate, by email information and alerts, just the person that's going to kind of be the one that's going to make sure everybody knows what's going on. And here, this is what you can do. Here, this is the letter you can use. This is the person you can call. And you have to make it really easy for people. If you're vague, they won't know what to do. So you've got to just get together informally, start talking, find that person to lead, and go for it.
Yeah.
Great.
I would also add that, like in my area, even though we're laser focused on our school district, I still network quite a bit with people from different districts, different counties. So, if you're in my area, you could email me, contact me off our website. But we're always networking. I know Moms for Liberty is doing a great job, and they're growing throughout the counties. There's other national groups like No Left Turn in Education. I'm not sure how much they have in New York, but anyway, Googling some of those things too, and they might be able to find people that they can connect you with to get you started too.
That's really
Great.
good.
So one more question that I have here that has been texted in is, how have your local churches supported your groups in your efforts? And I think for me, one of the things that we've been noticing is it's really tough to sometimes get the churches on board. So what has been your involvement with the churches? Have they been supportive? What would you encourage pastors or church leaders, in these efforts? What would you guys recommend?
Do you want to go first, Brenda?
Sure. I have found a mixed bag. We do meet in a church location. My group does. And I think in general, the churches are supportive. The conservative churches are supportive. But it's kind of a quiet support. And I think what we really need to see is the church rise and the church be the powerful body of Christ that it can be, and to confront the culture. We're on a collision course with the culture, and the collision has happened, and the church has to speak. And is it going to be difficult to do that? Is it going to cause some possible conflict in the body itself? Yeah, it probably is. But right now, what the church needs to do is recognize that truth is what they need to be proclaiming in its entirety for all these relevant issues. So I think we need to challenge and encourage our pastors to take the bold stand of talking about these issues that need to be discussed from the pulpit in a forceful, strong, clear way.
Exactly, because truth is actually love, right?
Yes.
It's not affirming lies. So
Yeah.
speaking the truth is actually love. And I would agree with you, Brenda. We are trying to collect our area churches and their leaders to speak out more. I think we have support with the individual church leaders. But I think, again, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear that they're going to be seen as haters and not welcoming to LGBT people, and that's really not the truth. I mean, none of these churches want to close their doors to any person. But like Brenda said, it's so important that churches are still speaking the truth, because really that's what people are seeking. So yeah, we are praying a lot for courage on the part of our church leaders too.
Yeah, and one thing that you guys have been doing is you have some of your members speaking with their churches about maybe hosting presentations, or at least just having conversations with either us as an organization or others that are trying to share similar information out there, which I think is good. Pastors are busy. And sometimes I think having just any member of the church, like we are the church, let's be the church. And so having a member that's willing to host these things, or say, you know what, I will take the initiative on this. Do I have the go ahead, and asking that way. So there's a lot of ways to engage the church. But you're right, we do need the church engaged.
Absolutely. And you guys need to toot your horn a little more, because you are so good at your presentations, that you are a wonderful resource to have, even if churches don't want you at this point to present to the whole body, just to the church leaders again, so they know more about what our kids and our families are facing. And I hope that once they themselves are a little more educated about really the desperate state that we're at, that they will be awakened.
Yeah. So it is encouraging. And yeah, we don't just do presentations at churches either. I mean, we've done them at town halls, and we might even have one scheduled for a pizza shop soon. So even if there's local business owners that say, hey, I could fit 10 to 15 people in here. I mean, as much as we can get out and just warn the community about what's happening and help to share resources and to come together, I think that will help parents and, community members to not feel like they're alone. And, that's hopefully encouraging to everybody out there tonight watching, that we don't stand alone. So thank you both so much for joining us tonight. It was so encouraging to hear your stories, some of your struggles and some of your successes. And I know that there's a lot of questions out there still. So, we just encourage you, if you're watching, to please contact us. If there's certain information that you do need, we'd love to try to get resources into your hands, and encourage you to start a local group or get connected with a Moms for Liberty group, or, if you're in Brenda or Melanie's area, get engaged with their groups as well. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to close us in prayer. Lord, we thank you so much for Brenda and Melanie, for their groups, Lord, for just the parents and the grandparents and the community members that are starting to join together because they realize that this is so concerning. This really is affecting our children, Lord, and it's shaping our culture and it's shaping their future. And so, God, we just thank you so much that we can come together, that we are not alone. And even if we do stand as an individual speaking to board members or other folks in our community, Lord, that you are always there with us, Father. So we just ask that you please open up our eyes to truth, help us to be encouraged to stand up and to speak out on these issues. We thank you for all that you've done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, everybody. We thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.